finally finished all the individual positional rankings. So now it's time for me to finally present to you my finalized big board for the 2014 NFL Draft. And I'm hoping the description box of YouTube allows me to put every single player down below. We'll see. I'm sure at least worst case scenario, you'll see the top 100 or the top 150. Now, just a couple of things to clarify here. Number one, there's a total of 225 players on my big board. And I don't think that's that divergent from what you'll see other NFL teams do with their big board. And what I mean is that even though the draft is maybe 250, 260 players based off of schematic fit, based off of off the field stuff, based off of injuries, based off of this and that, most teams might only have 100 to 150 players on their big board, actually, maybe 200 at the very, very most. And my list is a total of 225 players that I deemed as worthy of a draft pick in the 2014 NFL Draft. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't other players that could be undrafted free agents that won't come in and contribute at the NFL level. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just talking about in terms of draftable prospects. There are 225 prospects that to me carry a draftable grade. It'll be a lot of fun to watch how this plays out over the next year, 2, 3. You can come back and see where I was right, where I was wrong. It's going to be a lot of fun. It won't be perfect, I'm sure. There will be places, there will be misses, there will be places, there will be big hits. There will be like, oh my God, Schley Daddy was right on this one. Oh my God, Schley Daddy, you were way the fuck off on this one. It's how it goes every year. I tend to be more right than wrong when it comes to this stuff historically, but I have my mistakes, but I also have those big time things where I'm absolutely 100% right. Now, in terms of the big board, you'll also see if you watch the individual positional rankings, you've seen some changes in terms of players' grades. Like I had before Justin Gilbert as a top 10 pick. I've adjusted that slightly. Jadeveon Clowney was the 6th overall player. I've adjusted that just slightly. And, that kind of happens as you piece everything together. And I go through the different positions, piece everything together. And then one last time of reviewing it, I'm like, no, this player is actually better than this player, And that's how it all pieces together. Now, what you will notice on my big board is that my number one player, I'm going to stand firm with this, is Teddy Bridgewater, the quarterback out of Louisville. I don't care what the groupthink is. I don't care what the media said. I don't care what's happened on his pro day. I don't care if he's not 6'5" and 230 pounds. What I saw at Louisville was a guy in Bridgewater that could make all the necessary and required NFL throws and do it with great velocity and great accuracy. I saw a guy that could also extend plays with his feet, that at the NFL level will actually be able to surprise people with his athleticism and making plays with his feet. When I look at Teddy Bridgewater, to me, I see a franchise NFL quarterback. I do not care what anybody else says. I do not care what anybody else thinks. That's what I see. I see Bridgewater as that guy that can be a franchise NFL quarterback. And at the end of the day, that makes him to me the number one player on my draft board in what is a deep and talented 2014 NFL draft class. Now, rounding out my top 5, you've got the outside linebacker Khalil Mack from Buffalo. He's number 2 on my board. The defensive tackle Aaron Donald from Pittsburgh is number 3 on my board. Anybody that's watched my draft videos over the past few months knows I'm huge on Aaron Donald. Absolutely huge. And it breaks my heart to no end to know that there is pretty much no shot in hell of him dropping to my Chicago Bears at number 14. Number 4, I've got Sammy Watkins from Clemson, the wide receiver, the presumed number 1 wide receiver in this class. And the funny thing is I almost put Mike Evans ahead of Sammy Watkins on my board. And I'm sure other teams have actually put Mike Evans ahead of Sammy Watkins on the board. In fact, I will say this, is that the rankings between, let's say, players 1 and players 9 or 10 really isn't that much of a difference, in particular maybe players 4 through 9, to the point where I could almost argue that Odell Beckham would go ahead Sammy Watkins. But as it is right now, I've got Watkins at 4, Evans at 6, and Odell Beckham at number 9. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But Clowney, I've moved up to 5th overall on my big board. Look, I'm not sitting here and trying to knock on Jadeveon Clowney. I think he's a tremendous physical talent. He has the ability to be a double-digit sack guy consistently at the NFL level. But for a guy to be a number 1 overall pick, to me, he has to dominate. I don't care what people say about statistics, and sometimes they're irrelevant. The bottom line is, I am not spending a number 1 overall selection on a defensive end that had 3.5 sacks his junior year at South Carolina. Just not happening. And we'll see if the Houston Texans make that mistake or not. They should have learned back in 2006 when they took Mario Williams #1 overall. Make no mistake about it, the only reason they ever took Mario Williams #1 overall is because he was going to demand less in a contract than Reggie Bush did. And Mario Williams never had a double-digit sack season at NC State. And frankly, yeah, the Texans found their defensive end of the here, the now, the future, their franchise defensive player. But unfortunately, they came 5 years later when they took J.J. Watt 11th overall. What I'm saying about Jadeveon Clowney is I wanted to see more dominance, more consistency out of him, more consistent effort and production out of him in 2013, and I just flat out didn't get it. Was he sandbagging it a little bit to protect himself? Yes. Can I blame him for doing that? No, I can't. But the fact of the matter is that is a little bit concerning. If things don't go his way at the NFL level, if he's in a contract dispute, is he going to pick up his ball and go home, so to speak? Is he going to sit there and throw a fit and not put forth maximum effort? That is concerning to me. Still an incredibly physically talented player. Wouldn't surprise me that in 10 years he might end up being the first or second best prospect out of this entire draft class. But I am going to drop him just a little bit on my board and put him at #5 overall. Now, you'll also notice, especially in the first round rankings, you'll see some players that are ranked higher by me than you might see out of other places. Guys like Morgan Moses, I look at him as a franchise left tackle, and I look at his combination of skills, and I feel personally that he's the second best offensive tackle in this class behind Greg Robinson, and that margin isn't that great. Odell Beckham Jr. from LSU, this is a guy, again, if you've watched my videos for a few months, I've been very high on for a while. He's a guy that has a game very similar to Sammy Watkins. In fact, might be a little more explosive than Sammy Watkins, and I think brings a bigger impact in the return game. If Odell Beckham had better hands and maybe had a little more meat on his bones, I probably would for sure rate him ahead of Sammy Watkins in this draft class. Jason Verrett, the cornerback from TCU, again, looking past the size limitations and looking past some of the durability concerns, what I see when this guy plays is a tremendous corner. Reminds me a lot of maybe like a Tim Jennings, somebody like that. This guy can play. This guy is physical enough, even at 5'9", to be able to match up with opposing #1 wide receivers and be very productive at the NFL level. Marqise Lee, the wide receiver from USC. This is a guy, before the 2013 season, everybody was assuming that for the 2014 NFL draft was going to be a top 5 or at worst top 10 pick. And, you know, he had struggled through an inconsistent 2013. The knee injuries are a bit of a concern, and they didn't really help his production. But I can't totally turn my back on Marqise Lee as a prospect. This is a guy that wowed me in 2012, absolutely wowed me. And as a result, I feel it's wrong for me to just totally turn my back on this guy, because if he plays in the NFL like he did in 2012 at USC, you're talking about a Pro Bowl, if not all-pro talent at wide receiver. Kyle Fuller, the corner from Virginia Tech, as I talked about in the defensive back prospect rankings, this is a guy that has all the tools, has the size, has the speed, has the physicality to stick at corner for a long time in the NFL. Carl Bradford, the little outside linebacker from Arizona State. Yes, he played defensive end at Arizona State, but I think with his speed, his quickness, his explosiveness, he'll have no problem adjusting to being a 3-4 outside linebacker at the NFL level. And with all the talk of guys like Anthony Barr and Dee Ford and what have you, to me, the guy outside of Clowney that is the most explosive edge rusher in this draft is actually Carl Bradford. Jordan Matthews, the wide receiver from Vanderbilt. We're talking about a guy that's about 6'3", 210, 215 pounds, who can fly, who was a very productive player at Vanderbilt in arguably the toughest conference in the country, the SEC. I really don't understand, frankly, how this guy isn't rated higher by a lot of people. I think he's criminally underrated by a lot, and I think he'll end up proving that out at the NFL level and make everybody go back 5 years from now and say, he should have been taken around #1, which is where I have him graded. And then AJ McCarron, the quarterback from Alabama. You can talk about all the talent he had around him in Alabama, and that is true. He definitely had a lot of talent around him. But I see a guy with enough size to be a franchise NFL quarterback, with an okay arm, not a great arm, but an okay arm, a very accurate arm, a very smart quarterback with good leadership skills, good intangibles, good accuracy. I see a guy that a lot of people have slept on because of this reason or that reason. He doesn't have that wow factor. He played at Alabama. But at the end of the day, I look at an A.J. McCarron and I view him as a late first-round prospect, and I think he is a guy that could come in and be a solid starting quarterback in the National Football League for many years to come. So again, check out my big board rankings down in the description box down below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you expect coming up for the NFL draft Thursday through Saturday. Thank God it's here. It's almost here. Got one more draft-related video to do. And that will be my 2014 final NFL mock draft. That'll be coming up very, very, very soon, so stay tuned for that. Make sure you check out the 2014 NFL Draft Preview podcast, Wednesday, May 7th at 10 p.m. Eastern. The link to that will also be in the description box down below. See you later.